Thank you for tuning in. This is part 2 of the Escrow timeline series. On the previous video, we covered everything that will happen typically within the first week to a week and a half of the purchase process, which takes you kind of up to the home inspection, which is the J1. We'll begin here. Right after the J1's done, typically within 2 business days, your $10,000 deposit will be due. Again, this is just a random number. Have a discussion with your realtor to determine how much you actually want to put in. Just keep in mind these two numbers, it's going to be applied towards your down payment for the home. One thing to note, both of these deposits here, whether it's that initial deposit or that additional second deposit, both of those can be in the form of a personal check or a cashier's check, or you can wire as well. Once that has been completed, you'll notice here the M1 contingency is due. These are going to be documents that are provided to you from the sellers. This is what we realtors call the condo docs. So if you are purchasing in some sort of development where there's an HOA or some sort of association, typically those will have condo docs that are provided to you. Condo docs are usually anywhere from 200 to 300 pages worth of documents that are very, very important to your purchase. It's going to tell you things like the house rules, whether or not a development is going to be pet friendly, what their pet policy looks like, what their budgets look like, if there are any maintenance fee increases, assessments that may be coming up, all of those things will be included in those condo docs. So just like before, anything that the seller provides to us, the buyers have to give a receipt. So the receipt of that will be due typically 3 days after we get the documents. So that'll put us to the 23rd. Once we get those documents here, we usually have about 10 days to review those condo docs, which will put us to the 30th. And again, if you see anything in there that you do not like, this is your opportunity as a buyer to cancel out of the purchase contract. If we are canceling in this way, both deposits that you put into escrow are completely safe. Now, we're going to cover this again on the 22nd. The buyers are expected to approve of their preliminary title report. If we do find any issues that are on that report, but the buyer still wants to continue trying to purchase the property, the sellers have an opportunity to try to fix those title issues. If they can't fix it, that is an opportunity for the buyers to cancel. The buyer can also choose to just go ahead and buy the home anyway. Now, I do want to mention here, you'll notice I wrote it in red and it's all capital letters too. During these 2 weeks or so after the approval of the home inspection, termite inspectors, appraisers, and surveyors will usually come into the home around this time, because this represents a pretty significant cost for either the seller or the buyer. So usually termite inspections and surveys are being paid for by the seller. They don't want to pay for these things up front just because the buyers have a very big contingency here in the home inspection. If they were to cancel, they don't get this money back after they spent it for the termite inspection and the survey. So they kind of want to wait until the buyers have made up their mind and determine that this is the home that they're going to move forward with. Appraisals are generally paid for by the buyer as well, for the buyer's lender. So again, it's the same thing. The lenders don't want to go ahead and order that thing because it's about $700 to do so until you guys have approved of the home inspection. Usually the surveyors will go in right after the home inspection is done, and they'll provide that K2 survey to us on the 28th. It's typically done about 20 days or so before the closing date. Now, once we have the property survey, this is an opportunity to review the survey. Now, once we get that K2 survey in, if the property requires one, it's an opportunity for the buyers to review it, and yet another opportunity for them to terminate the purchase contract if they do not like what it says. We don't really see too many cancellations because of a survey. Usually if there are any encroachments, are generally very, very small. And keep in mind, for residential properties, anything that is less than 6 inches is considered de minimis and not an encroachment. Okay, so once we get that survey report in on November 2nd, this is when the buyers will approve of the survey. Again, the survey, it just covers all your property lines as well as encroachments. Okay, also on November 7th, this is when the termite inspection report will be due. So typically the sellers will hire the termite inspector. They'll go in after the home inspection is complete to do the report. And you'll typically get it usually about 15 days before the closing date. So once we receive it, If there is any recommended treatment because of any like live termite activity or droppings that the inspector has noticed, the seller is typically responsible to pay for that treatment, whether it's in the form of a fumigation or spot treatment of the property. Here on November 10th, this is another big contingency for the buyers. The conditional loan approval letter will be due, and we must provide that to the sellers by this date. The conditional loan approval letter is basically a statement from the lender which says that the buyer is conditionally approved for the loan so long as they meet a couple of last criteria. Usually you'll see things like the lender is going to be requesting for updated pay stubs, updated bank statements, employment verification. Those are very, very common things that pop up on a conditional loan approval letter. 7 days or so after that conditional loan approval letter comes in, that's when we have to provide the final loan approval letter. The final loan approval letter is also going to come from the lender, and it'll state that the lenders have met all of their requirements, all the criteria for the loan, and they are fully approved for it, and they're ready to move forward to closing. Okay, but before that, on November 15th, the sellers are expected to remove all of their property, all their furniture, all their junk, all the trash, anything from the property. It has to be completely empty. On the following day, on the 16th, that's when these sellers will typically hire their professional cleaners. They'll come into the property, clean up the home, and make sure everything's ready to go. On the 17th, we'll be doing our final walkthrough. This is an opportunity for the buyers to come in with their agent to check out the home and make sure everything is in the same condition as it was when we first inspected it. This includes things like appliances. They still have to be in the same working order. Any repairs that have been negotiated for, those repairs have to be completed by this date. And this is also for us to make sure that there are no new damage to the home. If we do notice anything off about the property, this is an opportunity for the buyers to do what's called a J4 withholding. The withholding basically will withhold 150% of the value of that repair from the seller's proceeds. So if the seller by the closing date still has not completed those repairs, those proceeds will be released to the buyer so that the buyer may go ahead and hire a contractor themselves to complete those repairs. Okay, so typically we'll do that final walkthrough the morning of. Once we're done with that, maybe in the afternoon or so, that's when we'll go to escrow for signing. This is when the remainder of your down payment will be due, as well as any closing costs. This last deposit here that you're doing to escrow, this one cannot be a personal check. It has to be a cashier's check or a wire. And then once that's complete, as long as everything goes through, you're looking at being the brand new homeowner on November 22nd. Now, if we do run into any issues at all whatsoever during the entire escrow process, we do have what's called an extended closing date by using paragraph F3A of the purchase contract. This is just another layer of protection for the buyers. Just in case we run into any problems during the escrow process, we can use that extension to move the closing date out. And the reason why we want this in the purchase contract is it's a already agreed upon extension that the seller and buyer will allow. If this were not in place and we did not make our closing date here and we had to move our closing date out to another date, it would require some negotiation. And there may be cases where the seller may want to charge an extension fee to allow for the buyer to do so. Now we want to avoid that. That's why we include this F3A extension, just as an added layer of protection for the buyers. Yeah, so that pretty much takes you through your typical 45-day escrow process. Again, I'll include links to these PDFs below so you can download them and follow along with these videos. In the next video series, we'll be going over what the actual purchase contract looks like. So we'll just do like a really top-down view of what the contract's going to be like. We'll just kind of really quickly go through all 14 pages, just so you guys can kind of understand what you're going to be signing. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer all your questions. All right, take it easy, guys. Thank you.